Welcome to Animation on the Radio, a London Animation Club podcast. And I would like to thank Julian Cripps, our guest on the very first episode. This particular podcast is in honour of Emma Calder, who is a big inspiration for the club. And it came out of a conversation that she and I had. And she was telling me about her film Beware of Trains and how she had to prepare it for festival release.
Okay, the audio description.
And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting just to screen, as it were, the audio description of her film, hence Animation on the Radio. And out of this came the idea for the podcast. Yeah. So, Julian, do you want to tell me who you are and where we are?
Okay, well, I'm Julian Cripps. I'm Emma's partner of long term from 1985. We first came into contact in the late 70s, but didn't get together until 85. So I guess if we're talking about Beware of Trains, it dates from a period where we lived at the Elephant and Castle on the 16th floor of a tower block. We lived there 10 years and we had a young child. Emma's parents were ill and we lived 50 metres above the railway on the viaduct that came into Elephant and Castle station. So the auditory landscape of South London, I mean, we were looking east over the Haygate estate, which had its troubles. We saw the Millennium Dome being erected, and we could look to the far distance to Greenwich and the Royal Naval College domes, and to the city. We could see the gilded flames of the monument to the Fire of London. So we were perched above the city, very much aware of it. The sounds of fire engines and police cars, shouts and screams and shots indeed echoed through our windows. So Emma had just finished working on Jed's film.
Kings of
Siam. And it was all part of that period of her thinking about different projects. And her father had been ill. And she had very vivid dreams and remembered them. I mean, I'm terrible in that respect. But she used these dreams, these ideas very much. And the hook line that she used in the soliciting of money, which she finally got, was, one night I dreamed I'd killed somebody and I thought I'd forgot. And this comes out of, I think, various anxiety dreams that I had ever had at that period. We were, as you said, we had a daughter who was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was carrying her up downstairs because we were in the maisonette. And then, we had the trains at night were sometimes very significant because we had these rail grinding trains, which I don't know, but maybe people are not aware of, that in the London urban railway network, the rails get a bit of a rough time with the trains braking and starting up at stations and slipping and sliding, which you're not really aware of, but it damages the rails. And they have these literally big trains with big angle grinders on them, and they tour the overground network in London. And so you'd see these, because you'd get the light reflected off the ceilings in the flat. If there was something going on that was brilliant, like you'd see this sort of flickering light. So, I mean, I'm a nerd as far as railways concerned. So I would always go out and look, and it was just magical. And these trains would be towed by these janky old diesel engines. They weren't, because presumably if they were grinding the electric rails, probably turned off the power. I don't know. Anyway, so this created a level of tension. You know, we'd moved into the Elephant and Castle in 86. I mean, this is, you know, been in the middle of the 90s. So we'd been there about 11 or so years, or maybe 10 years. So there was a culture that was linked to both Emma's mental state and the auditory world that we were getting. So the early story, which was, I think, was written all in one go. It was a stream of consciousness. It was a series of anxieties of somebody living in the city. And in fact, when we were finally writing the BFI application, it was very particular, because it was all there saying what makes it British, what makes it significant, what makes it relevant. So we were having to explain, and this was something I hadn't really been involved in before. So being involved, I mean, you know, with the other films and the Queen's Monastery, I mean, sort of going back, that there was a conversation that she'd had with other people, but on the Beware of Trains, this was a conversation that we had between us, because I've been aware of the project. You know, the project grew up at the end of the 90s. So it was like 20 years in gestation.
Well, shall we pause there for a moment?
Yeah.
Because we're going to screen or hear the film at the end of this recording, at the end of this podcast. But let's just do you want to say where we are now, Julian?
Okay,
and
yes.
set the scene for the listener.
Yeah, no, I've missed it. Well, we're in Emma's main studio down at Stockwell Road, which is a place we moved into in the beginning of the millennia. And we have a series of outbuildings which have been converted, or there were a series of garages which have been converted. We've got two which are studios for Emma. We're in her drawing studio. It's got her computers over here.
You can just hear the hard drive.
You can hear the hard drive. We've invested in some archival servers so that we don't lose any of the Emma's memory. So that's if you hear something, that's the archival servers.
Now, it touches on a very sad point. You talk about Emma's memory. Do you want to explain?
Okay, yes. Emma was working on lots of projects, and she had a little bit of some problems and went to the doctor and things. Anyway, she ended up being diagnosed with a very aggressive neural endocrine cancer, which, strangely enough, the date on the diagnosis was her birthday in May, and she was dead by September. So this is in 2024. So might seem like a long time ago, but it doesn't. It seems like a eye blink to me, I must admit. Anyway, so we're in her studio. Partly from the eye blink, because last year we finished the film that she was working on when she died. So by beginning of November last year, House of Love was finished, and that was screened at the London International Animation Festival at the Barbican the end of November last year. Sold out, wonderful night. And it continues now in the festival circuit. It's going to Melbourne, because that's sort of twinned with the London International Animation, and it will be shown down in Brighton. Yes, we're in her studio, and we're surrounded by the accumulation of, 50 years in the business. So we've got awards, we've got boxes with the Turd family go on holiday and characters from the Blues. We've got her golden reel from her big festival win in Vienna in 2022, and we've got millions of buttons and dolls and toys and stuff like that.
On one of the last times I visited, Julian, you told me that Emma hadn't thrown a drawing away since the age of 3. Is that right?
Well, I don't know about the age of 3, but certainly we've got stuff going back to when she was, 1 digit. and we've got a story that she created, which was important in my first meeting with. It was Emily the Inventor. That she wrote this story about Emily the Inventor, who would do all her work for her. So I was that was part of my I was first expected to be able to create a robot that would do all the washing up and stuff like that.
Now, since she passed away, you have been quite busy.
Yes.
And you told me something about something called the Emma Calder Foundation.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. I mean, Emma was very keen that she should be remembered. She was very keen that her art and her films would continue to be seen and appreciated. And the first thing was to finish the film that she was working on when she died. And as I say, that took most of last year. But in continuing her energy and her memory, she was a woman of such enormous energy. I just can't. It's when I start to remember that she would wake up in the morning and she would say her head was like full of stuff, and unless she went and did however many tens of lengths in the swimming bars, she was unbearable. I mean, so we finished the film, and she was, negotiating various gifts of material to the BFI, and they've got all her films anyway, and the V&A. But it seemed like the spirit of her work was in the support that she gave to other filmmakers. She was famous for contacting and being, she taught all through her periods of being filmmaker, and she was constantly looking for money to make projects. And when she found a source of money that didn't suit her, she would say, that would suit so-and-so, that would suit so, and she'd ring them up. And she wouldn't just ring them up and say, oh, look, I've just seen this really fantastic thing. You should apply for this. She'd ring up. And I was, one of the, I think after Garden Cinema, somebody who came to me and was talking to me, he said she wouldn't just ring up once. She would ring up 2 weeks later and say, what have you done about it? And so and to be honest, her relationship with the London Animation Club was been encouraging you and provoking you to move it forward, because there's a fantastic archive. I mean, this is another story we don't want to get into, but there is another time. So, and there've been, various attempts.
Well, could I step in at this point to substantiate what you're saying? Emma first came to London Animation Club in 2012, and I found a photo, amongst all these other ones, I found a photo of her sitting on her own in the room, and I put it on Facebook, and her old friend and collaborator, Jed, said, he put a comment underneath it saying, like a grenade being thrown into a mill pond, because she must have started talking to me that evening, saying what I could do. I think she'd come with a friend, and I think that night or shortly afterwards, she told me what it is I should be doing. Yeah. And she would have said, now I can come along and show some of my work, because 2 months later, I think, she did an amazing presentation of her work, focusing on a marvellous film called The Queen's Monastery, yep, and a series of sort of micro shorts called Random Persons.
Yeah.
And then the following year, she supervised a game of Exquisite Corpses.
That's right. Yes, I remember
which is
that well.
A sort of surrealist portmanteau film made by members of the club. So she did that. Then the following year, she presented her work again around a film called Boudica that she'd made for.
Well, this was for the Norfolk City Museums in the Norman Keep that's in Norwich. And then that was, I mean, if we're talking about audio, that was a film that was for the galleries. It was subtitled Boudica, a story I can't remember. But anyway, it was
A Norfolk Story, I think it's called.
A Norfolk Story, but it was the theme of it was exposing recent archaeological finds, and this was sort of, the Boudica, Queen of the Iceni. The finds just keep on coming, and they're incredible talks and gold, and just fantastic evidence of a really powerful civilization in that part of the country. Wasn't literate, they didn't write, but it was very wealthy and obviously a very powerful group of people. Anyway, but the film about all of this was in the gallery, and it was the previous film that they'd had, which was, I think it was done by a TV team that did Horrible Histories, drove the people in the museum completely mad, with all these inane conversations and funky music and stuff like that. So they said, we only want ambient sound. So Emma sort of developed a soundtrack that was both using found sounds, so it used water sounds, and we went up on the Norfolk Broads on the sailboat, and we're recording the willows and the reeds rubbing together, and we've got some fantastic. I mean, on her website, there's some great pictures of her sort of wedged in the cockpit of one of these fantastic timber sailboats with watercolors on her lap. She's got her hat on, so it's all
Almost perched on the side of a cliff.
Well, yeah. But we did do a number of recording sessions. Excuse me, where we were sort of fighting the. We were getting up at like 5:30 in the morning. I mean, this was in the summer, so it was light. But all the farmers were up, and they were out sort of cutting the hay or whatever, because it was sort of June time. So we were sort of competing with the sort of tractors in the background. But the actual film is an amazing collage of found sounds and actually sort of ambient music that was that she got access to. And so it that particularly focused an attention away from a very heavily directed speaking and musical soundtrack into something more ambient. And one of the things that, maybe because the idea of Beware of Trains was using the trains as a train of thought, but using model trains, using train sounds, the sounds of old diesel locomotives. These all came into the foundations of the structure of the film. So, I mean, we did recordings of sounds. Emma collected loads of sounds of old diesel locomotives. There's some, I think it's Swedish or Norwegian train driver who puts on like sort of hours and hours of literal, train journeys across Sweden and Norway at night. This is not sort of marvelous. This is just virtually, black with a few lights, but with a very strong audio of the diesel engines they use. So this resonates with what I was talking about earlier. The background of living at the Elephant and Castle, the sounds of the railway, the sounds of the city, and not the sort of sounds at ground level, but the sounds that percolate up to 60, 70. Well, bedroom was on 17th floor, so you got a very particular strata of the sounds of the city. So.
You have the kind of the ambience of Norfolk and you have the ambience of Elephant and Castle, but of course there's a real, there is conceptual continuity there. But it is interesting to think about what constitutes animation, and so it's really interesting to hear that this is coming from sound. And Bob Godfrey used to say something like animation is 90% sound, but in practical terms, probably a lot more than that. Which might be true with Henry's Cat. But to hear you sort of bear that out is very, very interesting.
Well, certainly with the because with Boudica, it is the whole. The actual animation is very, very minimal, and it uses images from coins and artifacts and bits of
found objects.
The Boudica is created with a piece of china that was dug up from the Thames and animated with wire arms and legs, and it's full of all this sort of repurposed material, and that is, you could say, is very important within Beware of Trains, because the use of models, all the models, well, nearly all the models, were in a sense found objects. The trains, the carriages, they weren't made for the film. I mean, there were, we did do, letterboxes, and I made quite a few of the props, but it was. An extension. Well, I suppose the composition of the film is a sort of collage composition. It's multimedia. It's got material from all sorts of. There's video footage that was shot in the beginning of the noughties. So there was video footage which was off a high-8 camera that was nearly 20 years old. The shots of looking down the lavatory on the train, that's from that film. The use of models, of textures, and there's an interesting story which I don't know whether it's the time to tell it.
Go on.
But you're
creaking a bit.
Oh, sorry, I'm creaking. Towards the end of the film, Beware of Trains, there's all these sort of what look like bushy, hairy things. Now, that's all our pubic hair. That's my pubic hair and it's her pubic hair. So the sexual undertones of the film are very, very explicit if you know what's going on. If
you know what you're looking for.
Know what you're looking for. And the sound of the chap snoring was recorded with me when I was asleep. So
without your knowledge? Without
my knowledge or permission, I understand. But the development of the film, the soundtrack of the film and the visual collage was developed. I mean, this is maybe something else that's interesting about the film, is that the previous film's attitude, I mean, we're talking about Boudica, but also talking, everyone's waiting for something to happen. The story about Richard Wright, a social media post, and that all of these things were films that happened in between the original conception of the film, of the stream of consciousness that was created 20 years before the final film came out. That stream of consciousness went through quite a number of different phases. I mean, initially the proposals we got in the drawer over here used some artwork which was very heavily pixelated stuff off an Amiga line tester.
God.
And that was right at the beginning. But what's interesting in the film, I mean, this is very visual, but there's a scene in the film where you see hands coming up and blocking your view. It's one of the sort of transitions. So the fingers come down, and you see sort of distorted railway tracks and a tiny, tiny little figure running away. And it's part of a sort of chase scene. The nature of those images came from the very early threads, but it was became part of the sort of collage media that was used to create the whole thing, which is both sound and pictures.
That hadn't really occurred to me, the element of kind of integrated collage in all her work. So it's more apparent in Boudica, and Emma said that she'd been mudlarking on the Thames since she was a child and finding bits, the found objects. And then so one thing coming from over here, one thing coming from over there, and her having this kind of library of sound, of picture, of artifacts and so on, which she could then draw upon to make, this great film.
Yeah.
Do you want to say... What? Well, Julian and I were talking before this over some very nice soup, and Julian was telling me all sorts of interesting things. But you mentioned the soundtrack of Elephant and Castle.
Yeah.
Now, Emma studied at the LCP originally.
That's right, across the road from where we ended up living for 20 years, nearly 20 years.
Yes. So this seems an appropriate point for you to, if I may say.
Okay.
Do you want to say how you met?
Oh, okay. Well, it goes, okay, she first spotted me. I was all carefully arranged. She first spotted me, I think, in 1978 at the Hayward Gallery at a show, a group show. They used to have famous group shows at the end of the 70s. They had a series of annual group shows. And in this group show, there was some amazing sculptures by Jim Whiting, who has continued to play a very important part in our relationship. Anyway, that's another story. She spotted me. I was helping him, and I had bright red hair. I had, more hair, and it was,
Bright red.
Bright red. And she spotted me and thought, ooh. But that, life went on. But she ended up getting Jim to help her create a life-size model of Madame Potato, her Royal College degree film. And I first properly met her at one of the meals that Jim used to have in his studio. He used to have an Acme housing co-op studio on the Archway Road. Anyway, we ended up, and apparently I said some very critical things of what Emma was saying. She said she was talking rubbish, but she was there because Jim was helping her with some of the mechanism for Madame Potato, who has to eat crisps. Anyway, but there were fortunately various other people behind the scenes, a chap called Nick Coombe, who Emma said he said that if we ever had children, they'd all be geniuses. That's
that's
story.
pretty much true.
That's pretty much
that's
true.
Been borne out by it, so yeah.
But anyway, he tried to arrange various get-togethers, and eventually we did properly get together because I was having clothing made by a woman called Tessa Brown, and she was opening a studio with another friend, and we went there, and Emma came up to me and said, "You probably don't know who I am, but I made Madame Potato." And of course, Madame Potato was more famous than she was at that stage because I knew about Madame Potato. I'm not sure I'd seen it, but I knew about it, been told about it. And this meeting had been precursor by, I'd seen her in the street. I was living off Mount Pleasant, and she'd be cycling past from the, printers or something in a bit shiny black bag, and she'd wave, attractive young woman waving at me, I waved back. But so from that point, that was when we really got together. And the sort of real instigator that we were chatting, and very, very animatedly, something was probably going to happen. I don't know. But anyway, I was dying for a piss. And I had to say, I'm terribly sorry, I've got to go and have this piss. And I was so terrified that she thought that I wasn't, I was bored with the conversation, that I was searching for a way to reconnect with her. So Tessa had got these big bucketfuls of daffodils. So I pulled out a daffodil and I gave it to her, and she was like, "Oh, that's very sweet, blah, blah, blah." And I tried to get her to go out with me, but of course she had a date already. I don't know. Anyway, but when she took it home, she said she trod on the daffodil as she went into the house. It fell out of her cycle bar. She was cycling everywhere. But she put it into water, on the off chance that it might recover. Needless to say, it was full bloom by the time she woke up. And so that was a very happy, precursor to many, many happy years. We're very lucky to have so long. Anyway, but that's how we met. And it was all that early stage, she was such a tease, because one of the things, we met at the Dog and Duck. We had a meeting at the Dog and Duck, and this was all to plan her bed. She wanted me to, because at that time I was building loads of stuff. And I remember being so coy, because I was, she was an important person. I thought that I was quite fortunate. She was famous at that stage. With Madame Potato, she was famous. Anyway, I was just saying, well, if you want a bed, what sort of bed do you want? Is it a single or a double bed? I mean, double beds now are universal, but in those days we all lived in single beds unless we, with someone permanently. Anyway, there was.
And what did she say?
I can't remember. I said, well, I think she was like reflecting it back on me. Well, what do you think? She was playing with me, obviously. But we oh dear. No, we had good fun. But and I suppose one of the things that, I'm very keen to make sure that Emma's memory, or her energy, continues. And one of the things that I found the most powerful, one where I'm so happy to talk about Beware of Trains. Obviously we made House of Love, and that's sort of wraps up a lot of themes, but Beware of Trains was such an amazing project. Being involved so closely, I feel very privileged, because I spent a lifetime with her, and she was making films, and right from the start on Springfield I was helping animate dots go round figures and stuff. So I was always involved, but never very keen to sort of not get too involved, because of the I used to go with all the festivals and stuff like that, and one of the things that always irritated me enormously was where you found people who were, girl and boy partnerships. And it was always the man who got talked to, when 9 times out of 10, it was the woman who was the creative instigator. The man was, I think just the producer, but he wasn't the creative source of the project. And I was always very careful to step back. But with Beware of Trains, I wasn't, I worked a lot on the production, but I wasn't credited. But it was really lovely to be so close, because, our cameraman was, having to isolate because he was for health reasons. So I was having to do more photography, and, was involved a lot more. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that.
So it's a lockdown film in many ways.
It is a lockdown film. Fortunately, there's a lot of film of stuff going on down the yard, and the process of its creation. So there is quite a lot of video and audio history that's there, which would
that's good to know. That's another thing we could talk about for some time, about archiving the work, but perhaps something we save for another. Do you want to talk briefly about your archiving project?
Okay, well, one of the things that was instigated by Emma's work in Vienna, in which she won the Maria Lasnik Prize and €10,000. So, it was a really fantastic prize. And, she ended up doing a retrospective, and, it's had Beware of Trains. So it was a wonderful experience. That the creative director has been very active in supporting Emma's work. And she was saying, we need more archive material, more material of, Emma's work. This was after she well, it's before she died, I think. And so it was, the reason why you may hear some humming of archive servers is to create a digital archive that we can share with other festivals, because a number of other festivals are doing their own digital archive of their history of the festivals. I mean, I think Zagreb is doing that, but the Vienna Tricky Women is doing that, and certainly with the BFI here, Emma was talking with Jez at the Animation Archive. And
that's Jez Stewart of the
Stewart,
BFI,
which Emma's kept. She was instrumental in helping other people get their material out of the labs when the labs were all closing, but she was very active in making sure her stuff was in the BFI. And she was, in the last months of her life, was sort of saying, oh, well, look, I've got all this archive. I mean, in the next garage, sort of over here, there's another space which is just full of planchest, as I say, of artwork from projects when she was under the age of 10, all the way through her college work, all through Royal College, all the way through all the films. We've got nearly all the artwork of as. Yeah.
So, will you be making elements of this available for people to look at online as well?
Well, initially we're just trying to collate. I mean, up till about 2005. All the work from the previous studio, and we moved the studio in 2005. We started work on the place in about 2001. So we moved in 2005, and the studio was operating here in 2005. That move was quite significant. So from a much bigger studio, the archive had to be properly collated. So that work is all collated. It's not catalogued,
right?
But it's but what we're working on at the moment is, first of all, saving all Emma's digital work, which sort of goes back before then, and starting to digitize other bits of work. Now, quite how this is going to work, initially, we're looking at trying to help and promote filmmakers who Emma's worked with, who that we know and have been involved in projects recently. But the digital archive is probably initially going to be archives which will be then supervised by the people who take the archive. I mean, we will provide access. It won't be publicly online.
Oh, no. What I meant was, I mean, you were saying about Tricky Women and so on, but can people sort of follow this up? Can they look at her website or anything?
Well, that's right. I mean, if you look at Emma's websites, you just search Emma Calder or Pearly Oyster Productions, Emma's website is a goldmine of blogs, of subsections. So there is a vast amount of digital information on her website. I mean, there are sections of blogs which go back at least to 2005. I mean, all the random persons are sort of blogged, and Boudica is blogged, and the everybody's waiting for something to happen in Richard Wright film. So those films are all blogged, and they have a lot of information about, and particularly Beware of Trains. And we, with House of Love, the recent film, we've similarly been trying to provide, I mean, through Instagram and various social media. But we've got a lot of digital information. I mean, both at the London Animation Club, Martin here has got, but I've got hours on my phone. There's tons of stuff, and we are working to build up elements of the documentary. I mean, we've got Emma was working with Jez Stewart on Secrets of British Animation. And that was a project where there's quite a lot of Emma, but there's, tons of other people. But the ideas about creative play and the fact that British animation wasn't British anyway, was very much Emma's input. That's why there was such a lot that was filmed down at Stockwell Road, But so I lost my thread now. But anyway,
archiving.
Archiving. So initially, I mean, this is something we're working on at the moment for Brighton. Is we're going to do a proper re-edit of the Secrets of British Animation, so that will be seen.
That's wonderful.
And we've got on the as a Google Doc, we've got Emma's filmography, and we're just trying to add to the principal films all the tests and the elements of films which came out of tests. I mean, there's another film which we might mention which never got filmed, which was Skateboard Heaven, which was initially a feature animation project, which he did a ton of work on, and there's loads of tests. And actually the artwork style of a lot of Beware of Trains came out of work that she developed for that project. So people talk about experimental animation. Emma wasn't mad about that it was all film, and she did a ton of tests, and Random Person was like a sort of expounded version of explorations in little tiny films. So you can get all the Random Person on YouTube, or through the Pearly Oyster. Oh no!
I knew that was going to happen. We won't say what that was. Yes, so if you look out for Brighton and those, that'll be very exciting. Now, I've lost my thread now. That's right. Now, another thing was there was an award, isn't there? You talked about the archive, but also there's an award. Do you want to tell us a bit about
that? Part of the idea of dealing with the archive is two aspects. One is giving support. We've got a studio here. We've got proper rostrum camera. You can shoot 16 and 35mm film if you really want. We've got the cameras. We've got digital camera, which we use with working with paper. That there is we're developing ideas where we would be able to give access to this. A modest budget, not enough probably to make a film, but enough to be able to give people a chance to be able to take time off from earning money elsewhere. And twinned with that, and this is something that we're trying to develop, is there is this business of promoting the archive, promoting the material of Emma's. So this is something that we're working at the moment, which would be a support to make a project, but it might be twinned with support to developing the archive. So it's either two things or it's one thing. It depends on what comes from somebody's ideas.
And where can we find out more information about it?
Okay, where can you find out more information?
Or is it yet to be published? Is it something to look out for?
It's something to be looked out for. Harriet Titlow, who was the sort of co-producer on Beware of Trains, and she carries on working in a sort of ad hoc basis for Pearly Oyster at the moment. And we're the main effort is to make sure the films get shown. That's the process. So it's other retrospectives of Emma's work, promoting House of Love and any of the other films. I mean, at Vienna this year, there will be House of Love will be part of the festival as well. So that's something else. So we're looking to build out from those people that we know. I mean, if we're inviting people here, we live here. This is our home. My daughter has a textile business that she works from here as well. So how we manage people that we don't know already coming down here is something that is going to be developed.
Sure.
And that's partly to do with the twinning. If we've got people coming down here working on the archive, then they can help with supporting other people who are wanting to make some films. So there's a sort of combination of of people, ideas that we are developing, but there isn't any announcement yet.
Oh, okay. But you'll keep us posted.
Yeah, you will. Hope. Okay. As a sort of teaser, there is a project that we are looking to support now. It's not come through, but when it does, that will become, in a sense, a model for future projects. So hopefully by the Brighton Animation Festival, we should know a bit more. And I'll be there, and there'll be a retrospective of Emma's work. More of the less commonly seen bits of Emma's work will be shown. More of Emma's story will be shown.
Well, that's great.
And we will announce more about the Emma Calder Foundation then.
Right. Well, that's something to look forward to. So I think we need to start to wrap things up. Now, if we're going to screen Beware of Trains after this, do you want to say a little bit for the viewer, as it were, about the film? Because it's quite dark, isn't it?
Okay. Well, yes. I mean, I don't see it as dark myself, but that's maybe because I've been through some of it. It is all about how an individual who's suffering from distress can, through their own creative imagination, find a way through. So it is a story, or it is a series of stories of hope, of mental vision and self-realization, I suppose. I mean, it has a dark aspect. It's not nothing. It isn't sewn up. The end is by no means. It's the beginning of another story. Another story is starting, but it does resolve a lot of the elements, and the aspect of the film where the character is sort of talking to herself, that sort of breaks the project up. And that was very, very carefully done. That was a later addition to all the components of the film. And she took a lot of advice. Although it's supposedly her talking to herself, she took an awful lot of advice of how a psychotherapist would talk in that situation. And in fact, the main advice is uncredited because it was,
confidential.
Confidential.
Yes.
But she took an enormous amount. So actually, those conversations, which are significant in the film, there's very few words spoken. And those were edited down out of a lot of conversations that she wrote for those sort of encounters. But those are, I mean, you can. The one thing, I mean, I have to be careful here when I start getting too emotional. One of the things that always amazed me about Emma's animation was how detailed it was. It may seem that it was like simple, but then you'd look and there would be something that would be twitching, and that was entirely deliberate. It was not, there was an enormous amount of control in those, this where she's on her foot is going, she's tapping, the protagonist in these scenarios is tapping her foot. And this is all deliberate. All deliberate. And I was, for the House of Love, and we've got, loads of, no, it's not one, but we've got loads of drawings that Emma made over the last few years that became part of the components of House of Love. And there was one picture, which was a tiny picture. It was only about this big, of a girl with some funny hair and stuff like that. And we thought, oh, that's nice. We'll use that for a Valentine's Day. And we sort of looked at it. And then we looked at it in the corner. There was this tiny little green blob with 8 legs. And it was obviously an accident, but she just couldn't let it go, had to turn it into a spider. And
that's wonderful.
So I think this is something that, all through the project, and particularly, with all the sort of collage projects and stuff, which, there's that is, the random person was subtitled by the Queen of Collage. She was, that was something really important. Anyway.
Well, I think that's a lovely thing to finish on, the Queen of Collage. And I
Yeah.
feel we need to have a toast, the Queen of Collage. So thank you, Julian, very much indeed.
Well, thank you, Martin.
I hope you've enjoyed it. I would like to do thanks again. Thank you very much to our guest, Julian Cripps. I'd like to thank Phil Davies, who has enabled this. I would like to thank Thomas Pickles, my son, who helped me put some things together, was my sort of technical advisor and director. Tom Lowe, who's been a source of advice, and my partner Anna Minton, who has been very, very helpful indeed. So now, in the final transmitted version of this, I feel that the lights would be going down and the film started. So here's to Emma, and here's to Beware of Trains.
Yep,
okay,
indeed.
Lots of love, everyone.
Thank you.
BFI and the National Lottery logos. BFI presents a Pearly Oyster production. It's night time. A Beware of Trains warning sign in red vibrates. A very abstract shadow of a woman chopping wildly with an axe is mixed with cut skin and fresh blood. Handprints, a spotlight shining, echo a crime scene. A woman's tired eyes open. The woman, who is in her early 30s, white with red hair, wearing a flowery patterned dress, lies in a double bed with her husband, who is black. The room vibrates and the woman sits up and rubs her eyes. It's daytime in the psychotherapy room. Two versions of the woman are sitting.
You murdered someone? No, I think I just dreamt it, but it seemed so real. I just couldn't get it out of my head. I kept thinking maybe I did it and forgot. Or maybe it happened in another life.
The woman sits on the edge of the bed. She turns back and looks towards her snoring husband. The woman's face is tired and fed up. She walks away from the bed. A brown baby dressed in red is having a tantrum. The woman appears in a doorway. She walks menacingly towards the baby. The woman lifts the baby out of the cot and bends down with the baby to watch a toy train on the floor. The toy train goes round in a circle.
I used to tell my daughter that the train that passed at 3 a.m. was the magic train. I secretly wanted to board that train and escape.
The woman enters a train carriage. It's daytime. A white man in a grey coat is sitting reading a newspaper. She sits almost opposite him. The train starts to move. The man looks at the woman. The woman's face is reflected in the train window. It's a summer's day. She closes her eyes.
We were in an open space, green grass. My daughter was playing, and then she ran.
The child trips. She falls off the edge of a tall building.
Then I heard someone scream.
A street from above, blood.
Was this a dream too?
The woman's hands drop from her face. The man on the train is looking at her. The man smiles at the woman. He takes her hands and gently pulls her towards him. They touch noses. The train jerks to a halt. The man gets off. The woman hesitates, then follows him. The man runs along a platform. The woman chases. Trains move in all directions. A computer monitor plays security footage of the chase. The woman is still pursuing the man further down the platform. Inside a station, the woman pauses to look at a bank of computer monitors. The man is running through the crowds made up of people the woman knows, her daughter, husband, and herself. She kicks angrily at trolley cases. She kicks a red case extra hard, just missing an old man in a wheelchair. It tumbles down some stairs. It falls open, exposing a chopped-up body. It's night time, and the man boards a train. The woman follows him.
Can you tell me more about the stranger on the train? He touched me on the arm and pulled me towards him. Then I couldn't stop thinking about it for about 4 years.
On the train, the woman removes her dress. The lights go out. Naked, she rips off her wig, angrily. She opens the sliding door of a compartment. She glances at her own reflection and then sees images of herself touching the nose of the man. The naked woman runs away from us. She is searching all the train in a frenzy. The woman opens a toilet compartment. She continues her search, looking increasingly wild. The train from above races through a station without stopping. The woman looks out of a train window. Another train passes really close. The train heads towards a tunnel made from a montage of screaming mouths. The woman runs towards us. Lights are flickering. The woman is being jerked side to side by the speeding train. A danger sign. The woman opens a door. The door reveals the train driver slumped over the dead man's handle. The woman checks his pulse. The woman caresses the driver's skull-like face. She opens his eyes. He looks dead. The woman feels the driver's crutch and unzips his flies. The woman mounts the driver. The train rushes out of a tunnel made with a handprint before hurtling through a level crossing gate. A signalman waves madly. Another train is coming in the other direction. The two trains are about to collide. The woman is in her living room watching the train crash repeatedly on the television. A small brown child is with the train on the floor.
You had sex with a dead train driver? No, but I felt so bad about myself then that sometimes I just wanted to go out and pick up complete strangers.
The man runs along a platform towards a blonde woman and her child. They embrace. The woman, now in a black hoodie, watches the family across the tracks. The train rushes between them. It's raining. The man puts up an umbrella over the woman and child. They walk away down a suburban street lined with trees. They arrive and enter a house. The woman appears and hides behind a tree. White lift doors open to reveal the woman in her flowery dress holding a bunch of flowers. The woman from above, walking through a hospital. The woman stops beside an old man in a bedside chair. The woman touches the old man's arm. He raises his finger to his head like a gun. Confetti explodes.
Your father was dying. Yes, and his mind was going too. He would start talking about very strange things. One day he told me he had married one of the nurses. It was like he was dreaming while he was awake. And I was daydreaming all the time.
A nurse closes bedside curtains. The woman types, "I love you, I want you." over and over again on a computer screen. A printed letter is carefully folded and inserted in an envelope. The woman gently touches the top of a scalpel. She cuts her hand and puts the blood to her lips and kisses the envelope. The lip print speaks.
You stalked the man? Not really. Although I did try ringing him up a couple of times. Once I went round to his house and I sent him a Valentine card with a very cryptic message. But I used to imagine I was stalking him.
The man picks up a phone. The woman's father is wearing an oxygen mask. The woman holds her mobile phone to his face. The man puts his phone down and opens the door to the street. A large funeral wreath hangs on the door. A train door opens. The woman chases the man along the train roof as it rushes through the countryside. We see the woman chasing the man on the train roof from above. They disappear into the tunnel made from a handprint. The train disappears into a texture of sparkles and hair. The texture spins, the toy train appears as it is turning in a circle.
You murdered someone. No, I think I just dreamt it. But it seemed so real. I just couldn't get it out of my head. I keep thinking maybe I did it and forgot. Or maybe it happened in another life.
The woman travels slowly down an escalator to meet her husband and a teenage girl in a big railway station. The girl relieves her mother of a large red suitcase. The husband puts his arm around the woman. The family disappear into the crowd. End credits. Written and directed by Emma Calder. Produced by Diraj Mehi, Harriet Titlow. Voice of psychotherapist and patient Amelia Bullmore. Animation Emma Calder, Sophia Negri, Luke Ramsey. Music arranged and directed by John Webb. Composed by Oliver Cripps, John Webb. More credits follow. Made with the support of the BFI's Film Fund. Copyright Pearly Oyster Productions, the British Film Institute, 2022.